In this hand, Gobstopper. In my other hand, Manstopper. Grafton Books, 1988. Now this, as it's evident from the cover, is an example of, I suppose, a rather niche genre, but there's a few other titles in the dog horror field. Now, I don't know how far I subscribe to the opinion that there's no such thing as a bad dog, or that it's not the breed, it's the owners. At the risk of wading into one of those heated areas where opinions run high. Certain owners, it strikes me, run to certain breeds. Now, in this case, the breeds are, I think it's 3 Dobermans and an Alsatian. I've met some very nice representative of both breeds, but in this case, their owner, or their original owner, is a guy who runs an attack dog. Don't know what the word is. Institution, plant, factory. He raises these dogs up to be man-stoppers, which means they're like, imagine a Terminator that licks its balls. They, once they're activated, they don't stop, and they don't stop until they've torn whatever has caught their attention into little shreds. And they don't, as it turns out, they don't, I mean, I don't know a lot about the dog handling and the mechanics of it. I would have thought, pardon my naivety, I would have thought if you were training, rearing, breeding these animals, you would at least condition them to respond to a handler. You need someone, surely, that can kind of calm them down or cool them off. Not in this case. They're just these fucking Terminators. They're like, do you ever see that? There's that episode of that Black Mirror episode with Maxine Peake in it. There's this kind of robot dog. I think it's called Metalhead. It's like that, I suppose, except nothing can talk it down. Not even the fucking guy who trained them. So these, of course they get loose. There's 4 of them. Now they're being sent to wherever they've been consigned. They get sent off to military establishments or, power stations or whatever sort of high security premises they're required to guard. But their breeder trainer guy, rather than using his usual transportation people, he takes a shortcut. He hires a lorry on the cheap, which turns out isn't such a slick operation. So the guy is driving his consignment of fucking crazy dogs through that sort of New Jersey-ish sort of area. He's kind of he's not used to having loads like that, and he's a bit creeped out by them to the extent that, contrary to all the rules and regulations, he stops to take on a hitchhiker in the middle of nowhere. But of course the hitchhiker turns out to be this fucking psycho dropout drifter type of character. So with inevitable results, it jackknifes. The loony drifter guy sort of gets, I think he stabs the lorry driver and gets away. So the driver is left bleeding out in the road, hoping he can sort of stem the blood loss, till help can come. But then he realises that the back bit has got open and the doggies have got out. And Douglas Borton does suspense quite well, actually. There's this repeated thing, throughout the book. Various people get into a spot with one or all of the dogs, and he kind of plays with the reader in that you kind of want to think, well, maybe if this guy stays very still, or maybe if he's smart, he might just manage to sort of quietly back away before these things. And it gets me every and it's not the first time I've read this. It got me every time that you kind of want to think, oh no, that maybe no. Every time, spoiler, these fucking dogs just tear everyone to shreds. So they're out on the loose in the area of this little sort of slightly isolated location. I guess New Jersey somewhere, or somewhere sort of along that bit of coast down from New York. So this little area gets terrorised by these things. Now, written into the plot, there's the lady who runs this kind of out-of-season guest house. She's almost like a surrogate Peggy Ann Snow from Magic in that way. There's the sort of young journalist who sort of sniffs out an exciting story, and then there's of course the handler guy gets wind of the fact that his consignment has never arrived, so he has to sort of join forces with or collaborate with the local cops who really don't know what they're dealing with, and go and try and diffuse this situation, even though he doesn't seem to be able to control the bloody things. It's just a question of shooting them either with a tranquilizer or an actual bullet, failing that. Now the handler guy, they've kind of written in it, Borton has written in a backstory to this guy, and I guess it's probably with an aim to giving him a little bit of, rather than just be this, I guess what you'd imagine the kind of guy who does that sort of job. I think he's tried to kind of give him this sympathetic backstory, and that they've made him, the guy's basically a Holocaust survivor. He escaped the camp system at a young age. But I mean, that strikes me as odd, because if you'd been in that situation and been lucky enough to survive it, how likely would it be that you would make your life's calling to breed and train the most Germanic, angry breeds of dog imaginable, and to to condition them to be these merciless killing machines? That seems odd to me. I don't know. Someone explain that to me. But anyway, yeah, there's this kind of high tension battle of the wits between the various parties involved and these very highly trained animals which exist on their instincts and on their wits, and are sort of running on their most predatory instincts. And it's fairly satisfying as a thriller. Actually, there's a little endorsement on the front from Stephen King there. Borton is very, very good. Now, I'm not aware of any of his other work. He's kind of a bit of an unknown to me other than this one, but pretty efficient. It's not a big thick book or anything. It's a pretty efficient thriller that keeps you locked in. Now, I don't know how much of an area the dog horror thing. I mean, presumably it has its kind of cult fans or whatever. It's because there are other titles. I think I've somewhere got one, Night Howl, which is by Andrew Niderman. But yeah, it builds up to quite a satisfying peak of slobbering horror, and there's quite a good sequence actually towards the end where it's a couple of sort of teenage hoodlum types get trapped in a fun house with, I don't know who it is. It's there's did I mention the 4 dogs? There's four dogs here, right? They're detailed on the back. Cleo, Bigfoot, and some of this is written from the dog's viewpoint, so you kind of get the sort of angry canine perspective in parts. None of them like Bigfoot. The other 3 hate Bigfoot. They think Bigfoot's a big slobbering, clumsy idiot. Razor, if you were in a position of being the sort of person who raises attack dogs, you'd want to call one of them Razor. I don't believe you would really. The last of the pack is called, and I struggle with this, Mr. Dobbs. I don't know. Would you? Anyway, also, it's also worth mentioning, kind of leaves itself open to a sequel. I'm not sure one ever happened, but there is an instance where one of them, I forget which, sort of takes a break from his killing spree and jumps over someone's fence where someone else, someone's domestic bitch is in heat, and he has his way, and contrary to his usual instincts, doesn't then rip her to shreds. I think another dog quite early, there's this little girl's pet dog quite early on in it sort of naively thinks he can go and play with these new friends, and is just dispatched the same way people are. But in this case, one of them impregnates this domestic dog, so in theory, much in the same way I think Jaws 2 did the same, leaving that sort of open end. I don't know if that would work actually, because the aggression is as much in the nurture, if I'm reading this right, as much as that, I think it wouldn't that depend on how this puppy or these puppies were then brought up? But I don't know how much this has to do with anything, or if I'm oversharing here, but the second time I read this, and this time around I managed it. I won't say how long this took me, but I read this book entirely in the Kazi. It's been a toilet read. Now you might conjecture how much shredded wheat I'm getting. That's nobody's business, but it is one of those books. It's not highbrow, but it's well written and well constructed. It keeps you in there for the ride. So yeah, thumbs up for it really. I mean, maybe maybe investigate what else Douglas Borton has written. But you get this nice, notice the nice embossing effect. There's this slightly raised effect going on with, is that Razor or is that Mr. Dobbs? But you do get this slightly raised thing on his teeth and his nose there, which is quite a nice touch. So there it is anyway. Cry havoc and let loose the dogs of gore.